What is up, Nico Nation? We welcome you to Snap Count, our seasonal NFL news series where we highlight all surrounding news that has to do with the NFL. And of course, the one we've all been waiting for, the 2026 draft recap, is on the table today. I am your host, Niko Chambers. Nico, the draft guy, you can call me, alongside my co host, Pete Dunn. Pete Dunn, how's it going?
I'm good, man. This is pretty awesome, coming after the end of the draft and finally getting a chance to really look back at it full scale, all 3 days. Having some time to kind of let it sit and resonate and kind of take really into account what these teams did, what they were going after, and really have a good idea of how they performed and the way that the draft went. So I'm really excited to get into this today.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, we're recording this on a Thursday, 1 week after the NFL draft kind of started, which was on that intro on Thursday for round one. So we've had some time to think about these things. We're going to get into a bunch today. We're going to give you the first round grades, all 32 of our first round grades. And then, of course, day two and day three diamonds, how we feel about them. Top and bottom three draft classes. Of course, if you want to see our rankings for all of our draft classes, you're going to have to check out Division Draftables. That's a series that we run here on the YouTube that's going to come out pretty soon here. One of our favorite things to do. We're going to have some fantasy ranks in today. I mean, we're going to go through it all. So the steals of the draft, the fits of the draft. I mean, we got reaches of the draft we're going to talk about. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to be a lot of fun. I'm super excited for this. Of course, we welcome everybody from the Draft Guys podcast, as this is our YouTube series where we really highlight everything on the video and on the kind of graphics side of things. But we'll really jump into this. And the first thing we're going to talk about today, we're going to do the mock draft analysis. So we did about 10 mock drafts throughout this segment, throughout this draft cycle, if you will. And we're going to show you how we did. This is one of my favorite things that we kind of do every year. We kind of get to look back at memory lane and how we really felt about these prospects. And we're going to start here with Pete Dunn's way too early mock. Of course, we got Fernando Mendoza. We had some guys on here. I mean, when we did this in January, or this was a part of a snap count back in the day. So, I mean, this was in that November, December range, and Dante Moore is still on the board. Pete, how do you feel about this list?
Yeah, this is pretty interesting. It actually for being so far out, I'm actually pretty happy with how this turned out. Obviously a lot of these guys went in similar ranges to where they're going right now. Reese was one spot off, Tate was one spot. You just flip those two, 4 and 5, and that's three you got right. And then, Tyson was pretty close in that range. And then obviously I don't think anybody expected Downs and Bain to fall to where they did. But I will tell you what, if you told us in December that Jeremiah Love would have gone three, I think we would have been pretty surprised. It's just like I think at that point, I think at least I was aware. I remember this, we were on this snap count, and I remember saying like people need to prepare themselves. Like Jeremiah Love is a better running back prospect than Ashton Jeanty was. And I remember like saying that, and I got some pushback. A lot of people were like, well, that's insane. What are you talking about, Peyton? You've lost your mind. And it's pretty consensus now. People feel that way about Jeremiah Love. And so it's interesting seeing a running back go at three. That's probably the biggest shock here. Other than that, though, this was pretty fun.
This was a lot of fun. Of course, January 8th was when this one was released on that video. That was one of the snap counts. And then we'll move on here to the intro mock draft. This was the first or the second episode of the Draft Guys podcast when we launched. Obviously, we had that Senior Bowl kind of preview, and then we just jumped into this after the Senior Bowl. And man, look at how we did. 7 correct to the team, 3 correct to the placement. We had Mendoza. We had Maui Noah going to the Giants. We had Styles going to the Commanders. Look at Caleb Downs there, one spot off to the Cowboys. And of course, Ty Simpson, that's a placement and a team. I mean, Denzel Boston, he went in the second round, but we had him here going. And of course, Caleb Lomu. I mean, P. Dunn, how do we feel?
This is wild for this far out to have this good of a mock draft. There's a lot of people that did mock drafts the night before that didn't have this good of a mock draft. So to be able to do this far out, I think this was better than the one that I did the night before for the first round. It's pretty crazy how well this turned out.
You'll be shocked, bro. We're going to look back at that and we'll see how you do in a little bit. This, of course, more correct picks than Mel Kiper. That is crazy to say. We'll move on to the GM joint mock draft. This, of course, was the mock draft where we felt that this is what each team should do. This was, of course, a February 20th episode. We got 4 and 4. So 4 to the correct team, 4 to the correct placement. Throwing Lomu at that 28 slot, right? Perfect range for him. Wrong team. TJ Parker, on the other hand, right fit, wrong spot. Of course, he went into the second round, but Everything else looking pretty chalk. We got that Arvell and Carnell Tate slide. I feel like that was one of those things that was like, oh, whoa, Arvell's going to fall. But he does here, and it fits with the Carnell Tate thing. Super interesting. We'll move into P Dun's post combine mock 3.0. Same type of story. Four to the correct team, four to the correct placement. He went money with KC Concepcion here at 24. Everything else kind of pretty simple mock. I mean, Carnell Tate would be probably one of the more bold picks that he selected, but we felt something about Ty Simpson going at 13. Mendoza is going to be correct on all these mocks because that was chalk. That was March 2nd. We'll move on to my post-combine mock 3.0. Not so great. I did get the Caleb Banks pick at 18. I had a little bit of more of trades in there. We'll move to Pete Dunn's post-free agency mock. That was in a snap count, of course. And he's going three to the correct team, three to the correct placement. Made one, Mansour Delane, going to Kansas City there. Obviously, they traded up for him, but that was their original pick. And he gets the Jeremiah Love spot at 3. Super interesting. Niko's post mock, same type of story. 3 to the correct team, two to the correct placement. This is when Awane starts to get frequently mocked. Of course, I had Delane going to the Chiefs. We'll move to the spin the wheel joint mock draft. And this is one of my favorite ones on the screen, Pete on. Ty Simpson, Ram. Keldrick Folk, we had him going at 4, but he ends up going at 31 to the Titans. Of course, the Maui Noah slot at 10 was there. David Bailey at 16, which obviously he went at number 2. Caleb Downs there. Pete on, how do we feel about this?
This is a fun one. Obviously, this is what we talked about. Like this stuff, like with the spin the wheel, if you haven't watched our spin the wheel ones, make sure you're tuned in for next year's. Honestly, go back and watch them because they're so entertaining. It's pretty crazy the things that happen, and this, like we talked about, it's pretty realistic. This is the way the draft goes.
It's awesome. It's so much fun. That was a March 17th episode, so that was still pretty far out. We'll move on here to the War Room joint. This is where we went 2 rounds, so that's something to note here. Obviously, it says 4 to the correct team, 4 to the correct placement. You see only 3 on the screen. We got the Sonny Styles pick and spot. We got the Awane pick and spot. That other player, that was Colton Hood going at 37. That was the pick and the slot, the perfect one, if you will. March 27th. We'll move to our second spin the wheel joint of this cycle. Not as great. We did get the Jadarian Price pick at 32, and then the Maui Noah going to the Giants. Super intriguing. Pete Dunn's final mock draft. This is the one, Pete Dunn. You said you didn't do well. You got 12 to the correct team. You got 7 to the correct placement. On this screen, of course, if we're talking just first round, you got 7. So you tied what we did in that intro mock draft. Still better than Mel Kiper this year. Unreal. I mean, you get Monroe Freeling at the pick and the spot. You get Awane pick spot. You get Boston, who ends up going in the second. You get Jadarian Price pick spot. You get Maui Noah pick spot and the Delane pick. I mean, it's really good, of course, with Mendoza. There's some other people that I want to note here because there's 5 other players that you got right. Let's talk about him. Zachariah Branch, you had going to Atlanta. You didn't have the spot, but you had him going to Atlanta. That's super intriguing. You had Drew Aller going at 76 to Pittsburgh, both the placement and the team. Unreal. Julian Neal, you had going at 99. He went at 99. Kate Klubnik, you had going to the Jets. Markel Bell, you had going to the Eagles. And DeJon Stribling, you had going to San Fran. Of course, he went super early. We'll talk about him a little bit later. That was April 21st. That was the day before the mock draft or the main draft. So intriguing to see. We'll move over to mine. I didn't do as well. I did have the Jeremiah Love spot there. Awane was in the same spot. But I mean, I'm really liking the board though, because I had this top 10 is like right on edge. Obviously, Bailey, you got to switch him. But all these guys kind of in that really good range. We did a really good job with ranges all year long. Of course, there's a few other guys that are not on this list. Malachi Fields, I had him going at number 74. He went 74 in this draft. Jalen Kilgore, I had going to the Bills. He went to the Bills. And then Ephesians Prysock, I had going 139 to San Fran, getting a correct team and a placement. Super intriguing. We'll move to the joint mock draft special. 3 to the correct team, 4 to the correct placement. This was just the 1 round to end it. Main ones, Awane, check. Monroe Freeling, check. Omar Cooper, we had going at that spot. It was so fun all year long. And we thank you guys so much for tuning in with us. But we'll move on here to the first round grades. P Dunn, you see the screen. I want you to talk about some grades for you that just jump off the page.
I think it's interesting that we both gave the best pick of the first round to Awane at 14. I think that's pretty fun. I think just interesting is like looking at the difference between the Bailey pick is just the first thing that jumps out to me. Really, the first 3 picks. We'll start at the top. Let's talk about 1, 2, and 3 is where I want to start here. So we'll talk about Mendoza quickly. I have that at a B. Is it the right pick? I think so. I would have done the same thing. A B is not a bad pick, right? Is kind of my thought process here. I don't think it was the bad pick. I think it was the best pick for them at the spot. It's just not a B plus, right? Like, do I like that pick more than I like I don't know any of the other picks like that are a little higher? No, not really. I don't love it. And so that's my thoughts there. So that might shock some people, but I don't want I did not fall victim to the repetition of the pick, and I wanted to keep my grade true to that. And so David Bailey at 2, I mean, just full transparency, this is a guy I have a second round grade on. Like, I did not think he was a great football player. I didn't think he was worthy of going anytime inside the top 20 to 25 picks. And then he went at 2. And so that's going to get a D for me. It's not great. I think that the fact that he's in that defense, I think there's a role for him in that defense, which is why it's not an F. It's pretty close on for me personally, though. I really think that a couple years from now, we're going to be looking back and seeing a pretty large bust there at number 2. And then Jeremiah Love at 3. Again, fantastic football player. Number 2 player on my board. This is not at all a knock on the player. I just don't think it's how you build a team. And I think that's probably why you have it in A minus as well. Like, it's just, you picked a great player. Congratulations. It's just not the team building roster. You're not ready to pay what that amount of salary cap to a running back. You also have a lot of other running backs on that roster that have paid a lot of money, and your roster just isn't in that great of a spot.
Yeah, it's interesting. Of course, when I do my rankings, I think of kind of what could the team have done at this spot? Could they have really done anything better? I think for the Jets, I'll talk about the Jets. I gave it a B plus for the David Bailey. I was not high on it. I'm actually a little bit higher on it now. I don't know why. I just think that it was definitely edge, and it was either you're taking Reese or Bailey. And we talked about you could take Jeremiah Love, you could take Carnell Tate. I think for the team though, Bailey's going to fit a little bit better than those guys would, and I think that it's not my favorite pick. Don't get me wrong, but I did give it a B plus. I don't think the Jets are like it should be a freak out for the Jets. Pete Dunn thinks it should be a freak out, but I think that they can salvage a few things. Obviously, we're looking at this list. I do believe in Jeremiah Love. I do think that the A minus slot. I think that it's something that they should have done. I mean, how much better could you have really gone there? I don't know if Arvell Reese would have technically really been a fit at that linebacker slot. Maybe if you had him as an edge, maybe Cornell Tate would have kind of been a reach. Like Mansour Lane probably too. Sonny Styles would probably be the more clear cut for the Cardinals. But otherwise, I think Jeremiah Love is a pretty good pick here. We look pretty consensus along the board. You have Sonny Styles at an A plus. Tell the Commanders fans what they're getting.
He is the number one player on my big board this year, and he's also the number one prospect I have ever graded. I think he's pound for pound, taking out positional value, purely who is the best football player at their position. He is the best football player I've ever graded. He's absolutely fantastic. He is a leader of that defense. Everything that people talked about with Caleb Downs as a floor raiser is what Sonny Styles is as well, at arguably a more important position for a defense that when it's that bad, a linebacker is able to impact things more than a safety will. And as that defense grows and is able to, become better over the next few years, Sonny Styles will only continue to get better.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the pick as well. I gave it an A. You're getting a really good football player. At the end of the day, it's kind of what you had to do. The board kind of fell pretty chalk, if you will, in terms of like best player available for each team. And if you're looking at, a big board like ours, those were like the consensus guys besides Bailey. So, them taking the next guy, getting him at 7, it's a little bit better than getting a Jordan Tyson at 8, where you're kind of screwed here. And you sit there and you think, okay, P Dunn gave it a B plus, I give it a B minus, but you're sitting there and I kind of understand the rationale. Who else would you take here? Like, honestly, the Saints, it's kind of a weird spot. Like, all your needs are kind of out the door. I mean, the only one I'm thinking of is Ruben Maine. Everybody else would have kind of been a stretch for what the Saints need. So it makes a little bit more sense. I just don't think it's going to work in New Orleans as well. I'll talk about Ty Simpson really quick. Check out the reel that we have on him. Not a fan of it. You are this close. You are this close to going back to the Super Bowl and winning, and you take a developmental quarterback who's not that good. Like, what are we doing, bro? He's number what, 27th on my big board, and you're taking him at 13. It's already a reach as it is. If you're looking at previous quarterback classes, I don't agree with it. I like the spot, obviously, is what is most attractive. I think that's what is giving you an A minus grade for him. But it's just like you're in win now mode. Go get Makai Lemon. Go get Sadiq. Go get someone else. And like, Pete, what do you feel about that?
I think that's valid, and that's like Completely agree with everything you said. It's just two different philosophies, right? And we talked about it on the podcast. Like everything you're saying is what I was saying too. Like what like you literally have the opportunity to go win a Super Bowl. Like I don't agree with the pick, but there is no position more valuable than quarterback. And this isn't their pick. This is a lottery pick that they got from the Falcons. If all goes well with how the Rams have been team building, they're not going to be picking at 13 anytime soon. That roster's really built well for a long time, right? And so you're going to have to give up a lot of assets to go get a quarterback in the future, or you can draft someone that McVay, contrary to what people think, I think McVay really believes in him. They had a lot of meetings leading up to the draft. There's a lot of talks that are coming out now that McVay is a very big fan of Ty Simpson. I mean, could not be a better in the last 10 years. I cannot think of a better spot for a quarterback to go and develop behind Matthew Stafford and in the McVay system, right? With Ty Simpson, who I think can do it. I think he needs time to adjust to the NFL. He's only played one season of football and had really, really, really good tape at points. And so I'm a believer in Ty Simpson. There's no better way in spot like you talked about for him to go. But again, there is no position more important than the quarterback position. And I understand the winning window now, but if you can get yourself what they think can turn into an elite quarterback, you just extended that window by 10 years. And I think that's what they're thinking about.
Yeah, super interesting. I see something that jumps off the screen to me. Maxi Honachor, you're giving him an A minus. I gave him a B minus. Talk to me about your grading for him.
Yeah, I think that this is kind of a pick, taking a swing on a tackle that is going to need time to develop. Last time they did this, it didn't work, and that's why they're taking a tackle again. However, I think they're in a situation where he doesn't have to play immediately, and that is really good for offensive tackles when they don't have to step in and play immediately. Even when they can start at guard and eventually move out to tackle, I think that's something he's going to be able to do. Although I do think he is a true tackle, I think he will stay on the outside for the longevity of his career. I just think it's a good pick. I think Broderick Jones has not worked out at that tackle position there in the Steelers, and I think that this will be his replacement. And hopefully some trade bait. I think he would still go for a pretty high pick in that organization, and so I'm higher on it than you are. But I do understand that there is a world he is developmental, and there's still a world where it doesn't work out.
I'll go on a limb here. I gave Blake Miller a B minus grade. You gave him a B. I'll say this, everybody on that row, I would take over Blake Miller in terms of what the Lions could have done on the board. I love Caleb Banks potentially going there. I loved Monroe Freeling over Blake Miller in this sense. I was actually high on Blake Miller. He's my number 33 ranked player on my big board. However, at this spot at 17, I don't think so, man. I would have probably taken Iheanacho over him in terms of fit for the team. I think Makai Lemon and Concepcion could have been more of a difference maker there. And then if you take two edge rushers, go take Malachi Lawrence or Akeem Mesidor. I don't really understand it for the Blake Miller thing. They have to really like these prospects. The Lions, they're such interesting drafters. They do it their own way. They're just like the Niners, and we'll talk about the Niners a little bit later. They're a lot better than the Niners do it. But I just think that they have to get a guy in their system that fits, and I think that he's ultimately going to fit. It's just a little bit more of a reach for me. We'll jump to Keelan Rutledge. We both gave him a B. On draft night, it was more of like, what are they doing? Why did you give him a B?
I think he just fits with their personality so well. And I think that he is just going to be. I actually, the same reason I gave Blake Miller a B is the same reason I gave Rutledge a B. And I think, yes, I liked the board at defensive tackle more at 26 than I did the offensive guard board. But there is such a value in just understanding this player is going to be good for us for a long time. Is he ever going to be the best guard in the NFL? I don't know, but I know he solves a huge hole that we've been struggling to fill, and that is going to be something that we don't have to worry about for a long time, right? Both of those organizations feel like they're in spots where they have the ability to draft like that. Blake Miller, plug and play at right tackle. Penei Sewell's moving to left tackle. You plug him there, he's going to be good. He's a high floor player, right? Blake Miller, high floor. Keelan Rutledge, high floor. Both those guys, I just think that they're going to work out long term, and that's why they got beast for me.
I think a big thing for me is that obviously the Texans ended up getting Caden McDonald in the second round. That kind of did factor into my grade when we look back at it, because if you would have swapped them, that's great. That's just a great job by the Texans. So who cares if you go Keelan Rutledge, a little bit of a reach in the first and you get a falling Caden McDonald. I love that. Oh man, anything else on this list? I see Omar Cooper Jr. at an A minus for you. I gave him a B. That's a big discrepancy. Talk to me.
Yeah, I think he's going to be really good in that offense. The more I think about it, the less I like the Sadiq pick and the more I like the Cooper pick. And so obviously Sadiq is sitting there at a C plus for me. I just I think it's good and I think it's going to work. He complements Wilson really well. He's going to be a really good target for he's a good safety blanket for whatever target comes in or a quarterback comes in next year. Again, I think he pairs really off well with what that offense is building, and I think he's very complimentary to those pieces they have around him.
Yeah, the last one we'll talk about here, Concepcion. You gave him an A. I gave him a B. I remember when we went on the first round recap video, you were not very high on it. So tell me what happens. What did you factor into your grade this time?
So this is interesting, and I don't know if I did this correctly, but if the draft was only one round, this pick would probably be a B to B plus for me. But they got Boston in the second, and Boston paired with Concepcion is like amazing. Like that is going to work out. They complement each other so well. And so I would hate for 3 years from now when Concepcion's putting up 1,200 yard seasons. I have him at number 11 on my big board. Like I think he's so good for me to, uh, with I have him so high. Getting him at 24, I couldn't put it any lower than this. I think he's going to fit so well. He is, talking about a big board, kind of a big board episode that you do off of rankings and fit team fit big board, he would be higher than 11. I think he's going to be the best receiver coming out of this class, and I think he's going to be really, really, really good.
Yeah, it's super fun to see that. And of course, these rankings, man, they're different when we do the first round and then what ultimately happens in your haul for the draft. We'll move on to a segment that talks about the haul from the draft. In terms of the day two draft diamonds, we talked a lot about round one. We've had videos and videos of reels coming out and shorts coming out about round one players, but it's time to talk about round two. And I'll start it off and we'll go popcorn style back and forth. And I'll talk about a guy that we just talked about, Denzel Boston, going to the Browns here at number 39 overall. He was the seventh wide receiver taken, seventh. And he's fourth on my big board, and he's the number 24 player on my big board. That's unbelievable. The Browns, what do they need? A true X receiver. They get a falling Boston for no reason in, the second round. And then you pair him with Concepcion, like we were just talking about in the slot. It's going to be a match made in heaven. The Browns did a phenomenal job this draft. You'll see how we feel about them very soon.
Yeah, great pick for them. It's just such good value in the second round. Max Clare, another guy that went in the second round. Obviously, my tight end one in this class would might catch some people off guard. I think he's a better tight end Sadiq right now, while still having the athletic upside. I think he's really good. And being in that McVay system, he's going to know exactly how to use them. More specifically, as the pass catcher. I think he complements well with Terrence Ferguson, what they have in that room right now. He's going to be more of the route runner. Terrence Ferguson is going to be more of the athlete and vertical stretcher from that position. It's really good. It's really good for that team. I think he will take over as that tight end one pretty immediately. Again, this is a guy that I think over the next few years you're going to really be talking about more.
Yeah, that was one of those picks where I was just like, damn, they got him. I didn't like that. I didn't
Yeah.
want that to happen because he's a really good football player, and I think he can do a lot of good things for that Rams team. I'll move to another guy who can do a lot of good things, who had one of the more interesting falls, really for no reason. Emmanuel Pregnon falls to 88 overall in round three. A guy that was my interior offensive lineman number three. If we're looking at big boards, I had Proctor as a offensive guard that kind of went over him. And of course, Proctor is now being viewed as an offensive guard. So I wasn't far off on that. But at the same time, he was like the second rated pure guard in this class, of course, behind Awane. And he goes here at 88. I mean, my number 37 overall prospect, he was the 15th offensive lineman taken in the draft. I can promise you there are not 15 offensive linemen better than Emmanuel Pregnon.
Yeah, totally agree. And then getting into Avion Terrell here, going to the Falcons. This is a guy that I had number 10 on my big board. Obviously, hamstring injury was a little bit worrisome. A lot of the teams, I think, were worried about that. And then there's vertical speed that I think people are worried about. Other than that, Avion Terrell is a really, really good prospect with some really clean tape. I love what he does in man. I love the way he defends the run. Like we've talked about before, he plays above his weight class, right? And so you can't expect him to play in the box like a safety can or do some of those things, but he's willing to, and I think that's really valuable at that position. I don't care if they play him on the outside or the inside. I think he's going to be really valuable either way. And so I love the versatility. You don't have to put him at one or the other. You know that he can play both at a high level. I think he's going to be really good in that defense. I really, really like the way Atlanta has been drafting lately.
Yeah, man. I mean, we'll move on to another Atlanta Falcons pick. It's going to be Zachariah Branch, just a spot that we loved for him. That was something going in. We said if he goes to the Falcons, it's going to be a match made in heaven, obviously staying in Georgia. But he was the number 79th overall selection in this draft, round three pick. He's a guy who was my wide receiver number six and the number 37th overall prospect. You were even higher on him. You had a first round grade on him at one point in our draft cycle, and he goes 12th in terms of wide receivers selected in this NFL draft. He's going to play that slot role for the Atlanta Falcons perfectly, like perfectly. He's going to complement Drake London so well. And that Falcons team, man, that's a lot of weapons. If you're keeping Kyle Pitts and you got Bijan, and now you have Branch going along with what they have with Drake London, watch out for those Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, talking about Jake Slaughter here going to the Chargers. I wasn't super impressed with their draft. This was definitely my favorite pick for them. I think he's a center. He's a true center. I don't think he's going to play guard. I don't think obviously he's not going to play tackle. And so this is a guy that I think is really good. Had some first round buzz going into this draft season last summer. Didn't have the season he wanted at Florida. And I'm willing to bet on the first two seasons of his college career being better than the last one. I think it was a down year. However, I'm willing to bet on the upside that a down year happens, and sometimes it's your draft year. Sometimes you have the better other side of that throughout the rest of your NFL career, and I'm definitely willing to bet that the Chargers are going to get the best of them.
Yeah, insider information on him. I think they're going to play him at guard. I saw things. I saw that they announced him as a guard, not a center. That was super interesting. I saw some of the phone calls with John Harbaugh and what they were going to play him as. I'm pretty sure that they said word to mouth that they wanted him at guard. That's super interesting. They desperately needed a guard. So, hey, man, that fills a role. We'll talk about a team that desperately needed a middle linebacker. They haven't had a middle linebacker in Indianapolis since Darius Leonard, like way, way back when he was an all pro. He was a fantastic player. Now they get CJ Allen, a falling CJ Allen who goes 53 overall in round two. He was my 16th overall prospect. And you're getting him at a position of need. My linebacker number three ends up being the sixth linebacker taken. That's like, oh, that's not that big of a discrepancy. For the all fall linebackers, it is, man. And they're getting a phenomenal football player, another Georgia guy on this list who ends up going to the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, really, really good football player. A guy that both of us had first round grades on at multiple points throughout this cycle. Really, really good football player. Not sure why he dropped so far. And then I'll get into Ted Hurst here. A fit that I'm really excited for, right? Getting him in this Buck system. Obviously, Mike Evans leaves the door and he is no longer with the Bucks organization. What do? You draft a freak X and get a guy that is going to be in there, really athletic, good at the catch point, with a high upside, a guy that can develop. You don't need him to come in and be wide receiver one. You have some good guys in that room that can supplement him, but that role is his, and it's his for the taking. Over these next few years, I'm going to be interested to see if they can develop him, if he can get a connection with Baker. He complements Ibuka really well. He complements Godwin really well. If Godwin stays around for the long-term future, I think it's a really fun pick.
Yeah, it's super cool to see these day two guys. We'll get into more of them, of course, with the Division Draftables episodes coming your way very shortly. We'll move here to the perfect fit segment. Some really good fits that we really want to highlight. I'll start off first. All off-ball linebackers that were drafted in round two. So we'll double dip here. CJ Allen going to Indianapolis. Amazing fit. Jake Golday going to Minnesota. I love that. Of course, Josiah Trotter going to Tampa Bay. Fantastic. Jacob Rodriguez going to Miami. Awesome. And then, of course, Anthony Hill Jr. going to the Tennessee Titans. I don't think if you drew that up, you could have better fits for their teams respectively based on what the board does. Great job by GMs getting the guy that fits for their organization.
Yeah, Anthony Hill would have been on my list if you didn't take him from me. I think that is just going to be so much fun in that defense. I'll talk about Justin Joly going to the Broncos pretty late. I think he was a fifth round pick. This is a guy that is just a weapon. And, a lot of the conversations we had, I remember when we did our offensive positional rankings, I said, I legit considered putting him at receiver. I legit considered putting him in the receiver category. He's just that athletic. He's going to be awesome for Sean Payton, figuring out how he's going to scheme up touches for him. You think about Sean Payton over the years with all of the different athletic weapons he had. We talked about Sadiq, right? From like back before the Waddle trade. Like, man, if Sadiq could fall to the Broncos, that would be nuts, right? And so Justin Jolie getting there in the fifth round is a crazy value, and having that weapon will vastly overperform that fifth round selection.
Yeah, man. We'll move, of course, a double dip again. Avion Terrell playing with his brother in Atlanta, one of the more cool things surrounding this NFL draft. But I think it just fits a need, man. They needed a corner too. Desperately, Mike Hughes is not going to cut it anymore. They can't do it over and over again. They went to double safeties last year. They went to double linebackers last year. And you finally get a cornerback who can play in that room with AJ Terrell, his, of course, brother. And it's just a really good fit because you just get to go into that offense or that defense and you just get to play football. And it's going to be super fun for Terrell. I don't know why he slid. That's terrible that they're letting him get to the second round.
Yeah, totally agree. Julian Neal going to your Seattle Seahawks, I think is a really fun pick. We knew that they were going to take a swing on some sort of athletic corner, and most likely whoever they took was going to be on this list because I trust that they're going to be able to develop them. And there's a really, really great spot in that secondary to take somebody when the rest of the secondary is so solidified to take an athletic player and let him develop around those guys. Julian Neal's perfect for that. He's going to fit really well into that system. I like the skill set. I really like the athleticism, and I think the Seahawks are going to know how to use him.
Yeah, of course. I was very high on that pick when it happened. Some other picks that I was high on, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cleaning house with their defensive selections. Ruben Bain, Josiah Trotter, and Keontae Scott. I mean, in terms of fits for their defense and what they need, I absolutely loved those.
Yeah, totally agree. And then I'll talk about another Denver Bronco going to another offensive position that I think is going to get used really well, and that's Jonah Coleman. You think about the guys that they have in that backfield right now versus what they're getting when he walks in the door. He complements everything so well, and he kind of is the culmination of that running back group. You thought about what you wanted Estime to be in that room. That's kind of what Jonah Coleman is. He complements Harvey really well. Those two in the backfield, hopefully you have your running back secured for the next few years. I think it's going to be really fun.
That is super fun to see. We'll move to the day three diamond section. And there were some notable names here, man. I'll start it off. Joshua Josephs, man, going to the Commanders here at 147 overall in round five. Huge need coming in. They only have like two picks in the first four rounds. They don't know what to do. And they end up finding this guy who falls to solve an edge rusher spot. My number 59th overall prospect. He was the edge number 10, a late second round pick in my rankings, and he ends up being the 19th edge rusher taken. Are we serious? What a steal.
Yeah, they needed that too. So really good for them. I want to talk about my Bears taking Malik Mohammed, a guy that we really liked over this draft process, a guy that I think is going to be really good in both zone and man, but specifically man. I like him more in that aspect of things. I think it's going to be fun. This is one you're talking about you as a we do this as a draft analyst, but we are fans of these teams. I was really, really excited when the Bears took Muhammad. Very, very excited.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job. It's hard to get really hype about a round seven pick, but I'm going to get really hype about one right now. Rayshon Benny going to this Baltimore Ravens team at 250 overall. I mean, I think that he will play year one. They don't know what's going on with the guys in that room. They got guys getting surgeries and injuries and all this stuff. I think it's a fantastic pick. He was a top 100 player on my board at number 98. He was, a late round three grade and ultimately a defensive tackle number 10 on my boards. And he's the 26th defensive tackle taken. I mean, just unbelievable.
Yeah, really good value there. It's you like you said, seventh round. That's a really good pick if we're talking about it on the podcast. So that's a win. I'll talk about Connor Liu going to our favorite NFL organization, the Bengals. I think they did a really good job, specifically with this pick. Anytime you can get this value of a starting center at the value they did, this was my top center in the class. I think he was the best one. I wish my Bears would have taken Connor Liu when they did, instead of taking another center. But I think the Bengals did a really great job. And so, protecting Joe Burrow is something they have not emphasized enough as they should. This does a better job of hopefully getting some solidify on the inside of that offensive line.
Of course, we'll move to Zane Durant here, going to the Bills at 181. That's the last pick in the fifth round. 15th defensive tackle selected. He was my number 106th overall prospect. Early round four grade on him. He goes to a really good spot here in Buffalo. I'm super excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, new regime in Miami, right? And there was a lot of ups and downs with this draft. However, it is a defense-oriented team now, and they have a lot of really good defensive minds in that building. They're going to have a field day figuring out how to use Kyle Lewis. I cannot wait to see what they do with him. Out of all the landing spots, he needed to go somewhere where they would know how to use him. Miami's going to know how to use him.
Yeah, it's super fun. I think the Falcons will know how to use this guy, Harold Perkins Jr., second to last pick in round six at number 215 overall. He was the 20th linebacker selected. Of course, he's my linebacker, number 9 and number 112 prospect. I think he can have an impact year one, and a fourth round grade on him is going to propel him into this day 3 draft diamonds list.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson out of Alabama, I think is going to be a really fun pick for this Browns defense. I think he's going to be really good. He's a really good athlete who knows how to be really good downhill. With the guys they have in that linebacker room, Schlesinger there can kind of control him, and I think he's going to be an absolute playmaker on the backside of that defense.
We'll move on here to the Holy Reach segment where we talk about the biggest head scratching moves of the NFL draft. I see Pete Dunn smiling. These are things that we don't agree with. I want Pete Dunn to tell me what his biggest holy reach was.
Unfortunately, it's by my own team, and I was not that high on Xavier Thomas. He was a guy that I watched. He is the little brother of Brian Thomas Jr. Obviously went to the same school as him, and he's just simply a much worse player than him at the receiver position. He was just not that good. I did not think he was being worthy of taking this at all. He's someone I watched and did not make my top 150 players in the draft. And so I was not that high on him, not that high on the pick. Uh, just really, really not that excited about that selection.
Yeah, man. I mean, let's talk about a team. I'll go back to back here that really messed up. That really messed up. We'll hear about them in one of the next segments. The Niners, man. And I'm not being biased here. It's just bad. It's really bad. First thing that you do is you take DeJon Stribling with the first pick in the second round. That is like the premium pick. We talk about it after night one concludes. You have all day to think about what you're going to do night two. And then what do the Niners do? DeJon Stribling. Like, what? Like, awful. That's just terrible. And then you follow it up with a guy who was the third running back taken, which is crazy to say. If you look at the kind of breakdown, you had two running backs from Notre Dame going in the first round. You had no running backs going in the second and third besides Kalen Black. Kalen Black was the only one who went in the second or third rounds, and he was the 10th running back on my board. Like, you could have went Mike Washington. You could have went Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton, like Jonah Coleman, and you go Kalen Black to complement Christian McCaffrey in round 3. What are you doing? Like, I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's good for you as a Seahawks fan. It's really puzzling as an analyst, though. It was a tough watch for sure. And we'll get into the toughest watch on your third one. I don't even know where to start there. Anyway, we'll talk about Philly, which is interesting because they usually do a fantastic job. I did not like the Markel Bell selection at all. I loved what they did when they selected Cam Williams, a tackle out of Texas last year as a developmental tackle. This is the total opposite. They drafted a player I liked more in Cam Williams in the fourth round, if I'm not mistaken, last year. They took Markel Bell at 68, and that's a much worse prospect in my opinion. I really, really don't like it. The Eagles, Howie always kills it. This year, I was not a fan of their draft class, and not a fan of this pick.
Yeah, man. I mean, we'll talk about the guy that Peter was just mentioning, Nate Borkacher. I mean, dude, what are we doing? All across the board, across the NFL, random tight ends going before Max Clare and random tight ends going before Oscar Delp and some really good guys on this list. And this was the one who's going to headline it. And the worst part about it, the most head scratching part, is not that you take him, who's an unranked tight end on my 150. It's that he was the third tight end selected in this draft. Okay. Because you're going to obviously, you go with Sadiq at 16. Obviously, you had Stowers. You have Stowers going, and then you have him going here. Borkacher, like going to the Jaguars. And the worst part is that this was the Jaguars' first pick in the NFL draft because they traded for Travis Hunter last year, which that experiment didn't work out in terms of pass catcher. He's going to have to be a full-time cornerback. And then you go get this guy. Like if you want to go offense, go get an offensive lineman or go get another receiver or something. And you go like a third backup tight end. I'll give you a stat, man. 417 career receiving yards, 198 receiving yards last year. That's what you're getting with this player that you took in the second round, who was the
Over
third
Max
tight end
Claire.
over Max Clare, the third tight end taken in the NFL draft. Awful. Jacksonville, terrible.
They literally, like, this is their first pick of the draft, right? They had their entire big board on any player you could take from the second through seventh round. And they were like, you know who we want out of any player in the draft? That's who they're gonna take with their one player. It is the most mind-boggling draft thing I have ever seen. Anyway, Caleb Douglas going to Miami. I wasn't a big fan of any of the Texas Tech receivers this year, specifically him in that range. I was not very fond of. There was a lot of other receivers on the board that I thought would have been a better value. Simply at that spot, when you have such a lackluster receiving room, just was not the one that I think was worthy of that pick in that spot.
Yeah, that Miami Dolphins team, they did a lot of questionable things, but they bounced back. They got Chris Bell, but then they
Yeah.
get the Caleb Douglas pick, which is a super reach. And then you're gonna reach on Chris Johnson, but you get, really good players in the back half. They got Kevin Coleman very late
Yeah.
in like the seventh round. It's like you're swapping players and you're still like making noise, but it's just like why? Why are we taking him at number 75? It doesn't make any sense. We'll move in to the Hey Rookie early 2026 fantasy segment. And of course, this graphic looks similar. This is what we did on our first snap count. This was the training camp episode, and we gave you what we feel about it. So we're going to do it for the early 2026 fantasy rankings for the new rookie class. And Pete, on you see the board. This is what we've ranked it. I'll start. Denarian Price is going to come in at number one. I don't think there's anything really to argue with. Kenneth Walker is not a Seattle Seahawk. Zach Charbonnet is injured. There is a wide open running back room for the defending Super Bowl champs. And this is the guy who's going to go high in dynasty PPR leagues for fantasy. He's going to do it all pretty much for the first 12 games of the season until Charbonnet can kind of figure it out from the knee injury. I just think it is a perfect landing spot. And if we're talking fantasy, great job by Seattle.
Yeah, totally agree. It's interesting talking about like the fantasy football versus the dynasty. Dynasty, we're not talking about that here. This is just for this season. Jadarian Price being the best fantasy football player out of this class isn't shocking at all. And I think that spot for him is going to be fantastic. You and me both had first round grades on him. Not like he would go in the first round. He did, but like a first round grade on like a top 32 player in the class. He's really, really good. And so obviously, talk about Jeremiah Love. The G word got thrown around with him very briefly, the generational tag. I think his hype as a prospect peaked at the perfect time. It felt like the whole draft season he just kept getting better and better. The Cardinals is a great spot for him. They're going to know how to use him in that offense. Again, I'm a little worried about the offensive line. I'm a little worried about the pass game not being one-dimensional, so they are able to lock in on him. However, the gap between him at 2 and 3 is just large with Tate. I'll talk about Tate a little bit. I think there's a 1A, 1B kind of conversation with him and Wandale. They play different positions and they're going to complement each other well in that offense. However, it's Ridley as well in there. And the way that the Cam Ward experiment went last year, it wasn't a very evenly distributed amount of touches. It was kind of it's such a sporadic offense. It's why like outside of Tyreek Hill, like the Mahomes offenses are always tough to project fantasy wise as well because it's a different target share each game. It's kind of the same thing with Cam Ward as well. And so not sure how the target's going to go in that offense, but he's a really good talent, and I think it's going to work out in that position with him with the Titans offense.
Of course, Alec Iomanner is there. I mean, we loved him from last year. I mean, you got a bunch of guys to feed in that room, but I'm going to trust ultimately on if they're going to take him at 4, then he's going to be clearly the number one, or the 1A, 1B situation, like Pete Dunn said. We'll talk about the Sadiq here at number 4. I just think, man, the value of a tight end, if you're going to take him at 16 overall and you think about fantasy value, you got to throw Kenyon Sadiq in this list. I think he's going to be more impactful than Lemon would be as a wide receiver two, or Jordan Tyson would be as a wide receiver two. Even the Boston and Concepcion conversation where we don't know who's going to be the wide receiver one, a lot of question marks. Can you see there's no real question mark? He's going to go in and they're going to have him be a pass catcher. They took Mason Taylor last year to be that inline tight end. You have Sadiq, who's going to be that pass catcher. And that kind of pairs a little bit with Omar Cooper, who's at number 10. I just think that I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know who's going to really get that slot value because I do think that they're going to want that in Sadiq at the same time. That's why we have Cooper at 10. Obviously, you have Garrett Wilson. Obviously, you have A.D. Mitchell in that room. There's just a little bit more crowded than you would think. Ideally, he's going to be the wide receiver three who's going to play that slot. But with the Sadiq thing, it kind of confuses me a little bit. If they didn't take Sadiq and Omar was the only one that the Jets took, he would be a lot higher in this list. But I think that Sadiq, there's a little bit of a wrinkle in for Omar Cooper's success as a fantasy player.
Yeah, I think people, the last one we have to talk about here is Mendoza. I think people should be surprised him being this low. I'm just, there is no pass catcher for him besides Brock Bowers, right? Gentsy's a running back, and he was never that great out of the passing game anyway. And so Brock Bowers is, again, I think he's the best tight end in football right now. I really, really like Brock Bowers. He cannot fully, carry Mendoza to a high level fantasy season this year. Again, Andy might not be starting. Kirk Cousins might start the year. And so, other than that, I love what you said about everybody else on this list. Hey, Concepcion, that's a sleeper, though. By the end of the year, I think he could be really high.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting to see what that Browns receiver room looks like. I think Judy's going to ultimately be bumped to a wide receiver three after being the wide receiver one. They have Fan in there too. Obviously, Judkins is there. They got a bunch of interesting fantasy pieces with a team that has three quarterbacks. So it's going to be a lot of variance. They got a lot of guys at different positions. They don't know what's going to go on there. Really quick note at the end, Makai Lemon, I think, while I don't like the fit in Philly, I think that as a fantasy player, he could be good as long as the AJ Brown trade thing goes through. Um, Same thing with Jordan Tyson. I think that obviously I talked about it in the reel. His skill set's a little bit more similar to what they're going to have with Olave, so I wasn't really sure. Edon thinks otherwise, but at the same time, I think Jordan Tyson is someone to note in terms of a little bit more fantasy value than some of these other guys on this list. We'll move on here to the draft grades. And we were not going to give you all of them, but we're going to give you the top three and the bottom three. So we're going to start with the top three. We got kind of a consensus thing going on. The Browns and the Giants are the two headliners, both getting A pluses. And then, of course, we got some other teams we'll talk about here. Pete, which one do you want to start with?
Ooh, let's start with the Browns. I think we've talked about them a lot this episode, just of what they've done, specifically with the receivers, but as well, I do want to hit on Fano. I think this is a guy that I've really fluctuated between. Again, you never want to prey on a guy's downfall, so I take this with a grain of salt. I don't think his future is at tackle. I think he will, in the end, be moved inside, to put it lightly. But I think he's going to be really good at guard, and I think he's going to be really good for a long time at guard. But that wasn't all they did on the offensive line. I love the investments they made down the board. I think in a couple of years, you could see them getting two or maybe three starters on the offensive line out of this draft with two really good receivers. That is a haul. That is a great draft. Back-to-back years with A pluses for the Browns, and they don't even have the quarterback figured out yet. Whatever quarterback is going to walk in there next year, it's going to be really, really, really good.
Well, let's just say that Deshaun Watson returns to his old form this year, maybe.
Whoa, whoa,
Who knows what happens?
whoa.
I mean, it could be crazy. I mean, he may be the starter. We don't know. I think it'll be a better situation if he is the starter over Shadur or over
Yeah.
what Dylan Gabriel can give you. But hey, man, if he shows half of what he was in the previous years with the Texans, I mean, this team is a sleeper team. They just keep doing it. They had Schlesinger last year. They had Fannin. I mean, these really good football players. I'll talk about that other tackle you were talking about, Austin Barber. I love that pick, number 78th on my big board at offensive tackle 8. They get him in the third round. Of course, EMW ended up being the number 33 on my board, and they take him at 58. I mean, unreal. Of course, they get two receivers who are in the top 30 at Concepcion, who's my 21, you're 11. Of course, Denzel Boston's my number 24. That's a wide receiver 3 and 4 in this class for me. Of course, Fano is going to be around that range in the 22 range. My offensive tackle number 2. Pete thinks he's a little bit more of a guard, so it's a little different. They had Parker Brailsford in the fifth round. I mean, that's unreal. Justin Jefferson in the fifth round. Joe Royer, one of the more sleepers, 107 on my list. Going in the fifth round, Taylor Green. What a pick in the sixth round. I love that pick. It's one of my favorite picks of them all. I mean, just throwing another quarterback to the mix. Why won't you? And we'll run two quarterback sets, three quarterbacks. We'll run them all. And the Browns, man, you can't draft a quarterback. It hasn't hit successfully. Let's have four decent quarterbacks in this, room, and we'll figure out what to do with them. Really high on them. I'll move to the Giants here. The Giants, man, when you can get two top 10 players and you ultimately deal Dexter Lawrence, who I don't think he is a top 10 player in the NFL. I don't know if he's a top 20 player in the NFL, but I do think that you get two top 10 talents. I had Arvo Reese on my number two on my board, the linebacker one. I had Maui Noah at the 10 slot at offensive tackle number one. So you get those out of the way. Colton Hood, 31 on my list. That's another first round grade for a guy that they got. My cornerback number four, Malachi Fields, number 61, my wide receiver nine. You're getting him in the third round. I think that's really good with what they have and need there. I think it's a lot better than if they went wide receiver first round. I would have not liked it if they went Tyson. With the value that you can get with Fields being that true X in this offense, they got JC Davis super late, 149, offensive tackle number 12. Pete Dunn, what are you thinking about the Giants or a different NFC East team?
No, I think it's fantastic. I think this draft was very, very good. I love what they did at the top. I knew that they were going to go trenches with one of those picks. They did a great job waiting for Maui Noah at 10 and then getting Reese at 5. Love Colton Hood. They need some help in that secondary. He's going to be really great there. I love JC Davis down the board. That's a pick I really, really like. And then Malachi Fields just complements Neighbors so, so well. With that X and then the speed of Neighbors, I think it works out really well. Really, really like this pick. Commanders, it's a good draft, and I haven't said that a lot. I'm very intrigued to see what it looks like down the board. The Josephs pick, you hit on it earlier, genuinely might be one of my favorite picks in the whole entire draft. I think he offers that power profile that they don't have with a lot of those other guys on that roster. Again, I think Antonio Williams can contribute sooner rather than later, which I think is really important. I wasn't as high on him for the range that they got him. And then I obviously Katron Allen as well. You know, they need some help in that running back room. And this is another guy that's going to be really good. And again, haven't even talked about Sonny Styles. A plus, the number one player on my board. You get him at 7, impacts that defense a lot. They didn't have a lot of picks, right? This was a team that didn't have a lot to work with. And I think last year as well, they didn't have a lot to work with. They did a really, really good job at not only addressing needs, but making this team a whole lot better than it was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll talk about a team. This may be a stretch. When we do division draftables, I may change it a little bit, but I'm super high in the Buffalo Bills draft, not for the guys ultimately that they got. It's more about team fit and more about the placement where they got them. Like, getting TJ Parker after trading back into the second or trading back out into the second round was phenomenal. I love that. That's an absolute great thing at 35. He's my number 25th player, and you still get him. That's a guy that they probably would have taken at one of their earlier picks that they didn't trade out. Igbinosun is another really good guy. They took him in the second, a little bit of a reach. I had him at 99. They took him at 62. But at the end of the day, fills a role. Jude Bowery, a 72 on my big board, and he goes at 102 in the fourth. Skylar Bell, 83 on my board. He goes 125 in the fourth. Jalen Kilgore, 89 on my board. He goes 167 in the fifth. Zane Duran, 106 on my board, goes 181. And then, of course, Caleb Alarms or 119 on my board goes 126. I mean, these are guys that are going to fill roles for this Bills team. And I think it's going to be super good. I mean, this is a Bills team that's kind of on the edge. Are they going to make it in this kind of AFC that's kind of wide open? It was wide open last year. It could be wide open this year. We don't know. But you still got Burrow. You still got Lamar. Patrick Mahomes is going to be coming back. It's going to be crowded again. But at the end of the day, like, they can make a run here and they can finally do it, maybe break this curse. We'll move now to the bad one, to the very bad, to the very, very, very bad. The bottom three draft classes, we are consensus on two of them. We got a little bit of a fluctuation around here with some others. Pete, you get the floor first. Talk about anyone you want.
Let's talk about the Eagles, man. We got into it a little bit earlier just because of how shocked I am, right? It's hard giving this a bad grade because I like Lemon as a player. I hate the fit. I think he's going to be really, really bad as an Eagle. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think he's going to pair well with Devontae Smith. I don't care if you keep AJ Brown or you trade AJ Brown. I don't think it's going to work. And then Eli Stowers, I just wasn't high on that player. But again, not in this offense. I don't think he works with Jalen Hurts. I don't think he fits the mold of the way that passing offense is going to work. Already talked about Markel Bell. And then truth be told, I think they just blew the rest of the picks. Cole Payton, backup quarterback, Micah Morris. I did not have he was taken in the round six, hadn't heard of him before. Don't even know how to produce the round seven safety they took. And then they took a dude that's literally never played football before. Like it's just not that great of a draft class. Howie usually does a really good job. And I was not that high on what they did this year.
I mean, all over my reels has been Makai Lemon stuff, probably because we hated on it in our own short that we posted. But I just see this weird kind of connect where Howie Roseman thinks that he's the guy, and he just failed here. He usually does a really good job. Not very high in it. Don't want to rain on that guy's parade, but Bernard at that last pick, one of the most glazed picks I've ever seen lately. I mean, obviously he hasn't played and all these different things. It's a great story, but like comparing him to Miles Garrett on the ticker of the day of, like, bro, like he hasn't played football. Like let's calm down. They think that they're gonna like bring him into something. He's got to play football. He's played rugby.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unreal. When you have a list here with two teams in your division as a fan, also as an analyst, looking back at a Super Bowl champion and two teams that were, high in that NFC. They were the second and third ranked in terms of wins in the NFC, and they had terrible drafts. And I am thrilled to announce how bad the Niners really did this draft. I mean, you talked about it. We talked about it. DeJon Stribling at their second round pick was terrible. They did trade back twice, so that's good. Maybe, get some capital for the 2027 draft class that we talk about all the time. Terrible pick, though. Awful. Then you go Romello Height, a little bit of a reach in the third round at number 70. He was my defensive end 14. You're taking him at 94 on my big board, and he goes at 70. I don't like that at all. And then Kalen Black, I didn't like that pick at all. You go get a running back when there's Mike Washington's on the board and Patron Allen, Nicholas Singleton, like Jonah Coleman, and you go take a bad running back, terrible. Grayson Halton's probably going to be one of the better picks that you see on here going at 107. He was 80th on my board, defensive tackle 8. I was high on the Ephesians price spot. We talked about that earlier. That's about it, though, because I'm looking at the other guys and there's nothing notable. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing when you have that many misses.
When we got on here, I told you that I have never given out an F before talking about draft grades for teams. I don't know if I will because they took Pregnon in the third, and that's a play I really liked, and the value is really good. But I've given out a lot of Ds before, and this is much worse than any other D I've ever given out. This is the worst draft class I've ever seen from the Jacksonville Jaguars. We talked about what they did in the second round. Again, I don't even know where to start. Like I have no idea where to start with these. Regis going in third. That's probably a fifth or sixth round player that they took in the third round. Pregnon, honestly, really great pick. Like it's a great pick, right? I don't. I've heard of Josh Cameron in the sixth. None of the other players I've heard. We do like this is what we do. We do the draft, right? Like we spend a lot of time researching prospects, understanding who these teams are going to take, like trying to find the best players in draft. I literally have never seen five of those names before. I've never seen them before, right? I just, again, Gladstone is a really young general manager. And so I don't know if he's trying to be the, crazy psycho mathematician that's outsmarting everybody else. Brother, you didn't even draft important positions. It's not like you drafted an offensive tackle in the second round that nobody's ever heard of. You drafted a tight end in the second round that nobody's ever heard of. Like, it's not even that impactful position. Like, he could be really good and people won't know till like week 7 because it's the tight end. Like, it's just like I don't understand what you're doing here. I don't understand your thought process. It's just it was pick, and then another bad pick, and then a good pick, and then 6 other really bad. Like it's just I don't know, man. What you go ahead. I can't talk about this anymore.
On my list too, of course. They didn't have the first round pick from that very bold trade last year to go get Travis Hunter. They haven't utilized him right. Then you go get a tight end at that second round pick, your first. Regis at the third, like, what are we doing? Pregnon, they get a good slide. I talked about Wesley Williams. I was higher on him. I actually had a fourth round grade on him, so that fits, but I don't think anybody had a fourth round grade on him. I was one of the higher ones for him. And then they go
Yeah.
take another tight end. Then they take two wide receivers. Then they take an edge rusher and a linebacker. Like, nothing on the offensive line when they needed it. Like, what are we doing? Like, I don't understand. Go get you a running back, maybe. You don't have another running back. You have Tootin. That's it. That's it. Like, you watched ETN leave. Like, what are we gonna do here? Like, I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. It's an embarrassment. They need to be better. It's terrible. Just absolutely awful. That'll be it for us here today. We are so excited for everything that comes forth with this episode and SnapCount in general. It's been a blast. We thank you guys so much for tuning in. Stay tuned for all the reels. And we're gonna have a special episode talking about the 2027 draft class very, very, very soon. Pete is super excited for that. We thank you guys so much for tuning in.